All right. This is episode 37 of Conscious Growth. Today, we're talking about how you can profitably grow an e-commerce business and the process of reaching net profitability if you're using an agency or any sort of outside service to get you there on your testing, your direct-to-consumer marketing. So we kind of went through our little roadmap of how you can get to profitability and some of the real shortcuts that we see right now, which is April 2023. Austin, do you have a piece you want to start with on our roadmap?
No, I say let's just, I guess we can start because there's two paths. So starting at either wherever your business is, either you're a business that has some sort of spend currently going on, or you're a business that has no spend and you're a bit smaller. I think we'll probably need to talk about the full path for each of those, and then the ways to shortcut timelines either way. But let's start with a business that is, let's say, sub 2.5 million in revenue. I'd say or sub 5 mil. What would you say is
I would say sub 2.5 is probably the best one to start with. And just for context, the two main types of businesses we're going to discuss today, one would be a business that's privately held and is planning on maintaining that status, being a privately held business, someone who wants to grow it just to be profitable. The next example we're going to give is someone who's growing the business rapidly in anticipation of some sort of liquidity event, whether it's a sale into private equity or to a larger company like a strategic acquisition. So that's how we're going to split it up, because the approach we take is very different and the timelines we're going to give are different. So I would say sub 2.5 mil, the privately held business that plans to continue that way is, let's start with that.
Yeah. So I feel like, we'll talk about both tracks within both, but if you are the sub 2.5 looking for straight profitability long-term, of course, there's a few different constrictions out of the gate. So there's budget, there's the offer, there is the creatives, and then to get to that road to profitability, you have to find the perfect balance between those three things. When we're going into this, a lot of times at the beginning, the testing aspect is kind of what I would say is the most illuminating, but also the thing that causes the most impatience out of the gate is okay, what are we testing? When are we testing? How are we testing it? And how does this reflect within the actual business, the company? Are they going to make changes based on the learnings that are coming from this internally? The answer that's normally no out of the gate. So for instance, I'm going to move it up to 5 million. If you're a company around 5 million or less, then, and you weren't previously spending much on, let's say, Meta, TikTok, and Google, so you don't know what your offer is that will scale. You don't have that golden ticket yet. You don't know which creatives will ultimately be the style that represents your ads on Meta and TikTok, and you haven't essentially optimized an account. So what we kind of have to hold as the frame is Meta, the pixel, the account, the campaign, the ads are assets. Same with TikTok, but I'm just going to use Meta because it's an easier way to talk about everything. With Meta, you want a campaign that is a CBO. And I say campaign because if you're doing ABOs, which is an ad set budget, then you're pretty much always going to have to fight the decay or lack of data that comes from having just one ad set running or having multiple ad sets running with different budgets. So if we're just doing one campaign and we have one ad set and we have X amount of creatives, each creative, let's say, is either a different offer or it's just a different angle to a pre-existing offer that makes up, let's say, 50% or more of the pre-existing business. So we have some idea that this offer works, at least for warm traffic or organic means of acquisition, but we don't necessarily know whether or not it does for cold traffic. Then the ultimate goal at the beginning is to tune this engine up to your customer, who it's looking for. So it needs a lot of data, and it needs to be treated like an asset, meaning you're putting time, effort, energy, and money into Meta in order to ensure that the account, the campaign, and those ads are becoming long-term assets. You should be able to spin a campaign up, let it get to, we say, between 7 and 8 conversions a day, which gets you about 50 conversions a week, which is kind of Facebook's optimization recommendations. And then that campaign should be able to continue to run, let's say, I won't say for the lifetime of your account, but 4 years. And that's the goal out of the gate, is getting a Meta account, again, we're speaking Meta specifically, tuned up to be able to use the machine learning to find your customers at probably between break even and slightly above break even when you take away COGS.
So that'd be like the first step then, just to clarify, getting to that 7 to 8 conversions a day at close to or slightly above break even would be like the first step towards building a profitable acquisition channel on a new platform. In this case, using Meta as an example.
And at that point, you know whether or not you're going to be able to do things on Meta. So if like you set aside, let's say 25 grand budget to be able to test that, and you don't get any results, there's probably going to be something deeper to look into. So whether it's the offer, whether it's the product market match, there's a lot of different reasons that it may not be working. But let's say you get to that point. So now you likely have one offer works on Meta, and you have a few creatives that probably drove the majority of those conversions. At a lower spend, that's almost always what happens. Like 1 to 4 creatives are driving everything. This is the point where you start to embark on 2 different sorts of testing methodologies, depending on where the budget's going to go, where you're looking to determine what types of creatives work for your ad account and which types of offers and variations of your current pre-existing offer will convert better than what you're currently seeing. This is all to like get you to that point where you're profitable across the board. Anything that I'm missing so far, Ian?
Well, I know we were going to talk about this for the larger types of companies, but most of these companies, even at this level, they're definitely going to have multiple products. So at what point would you go from, okay, we're break even or slightly above, slightly profitable at this 50 conversions a week to testing the next set of thoughtfully thought out products that you want to offer to cold traffic and the next type of creatives? And then the other part would be, how are you going to take the learnings from that first product that won for the creative testing for the follow-on products in order to also get them to that same 7 to 8 conversion per day level where they're close to or profitable on Meta?
Yeah. So at a certain point, and this depends on product, how much the products actually cost, but I will say around like $1,000 a day. You've got like a pretty consistent account from the standpoint of like if your main offer's doing a majority of that spend, maybe you have some more marketing going to. So let's say like 80% is going to that offer. Then that's when you start to create a test campaign and you start testing either offers in that campaign or creatives. And of course, you're testing creatives for each offer, but you just kind of like determine which is going to make the biggest impact right now. Have you figured out which types of creatives already work based on that initial test and the campaign that is now your control campaign? Or are you still trying to figure out what that looks like from a creative standpoint because the offer was just converting very well, or vice versa? So at this point, you're testing creative styles, which is everything from like lifestyle to like highly stylized to product comparison to UGC testimonials, you name it. Or you're testing like buy one, get one. You're testing, your same product 136, whatever the offer that you're trying to test is that makes sense from a business standpoint. That's when around the 1,000 a day, I'd say it typically makes sense to start to embark on a more rigorous testing schedule. But if you haven't figured out an offer that gets close to the ROAS you're looking for by then you're probably going to need to do that sooner.
Yeah. And so if you started to test follow-on products to cold traffic, would you try to decide if you want to emulate the offer that's already worked or emulate the styles of creative, or would you start off testing both of those out of the gate?
So I always take the learnings from that first campaign and apply that to making the next creatives for the next offer. It's the only way you're going to get a baseline. So if it's literally like a picture of the product and there's like all these benefits around it, and that's the thing that was working for offer number 1, it should be for offer number 2 also. Same thing, same type of copy. You shouldn't start testing 45 variables that you can't actually figure out what's going on. You should always take the learnings from the previous winner and apply that across the board every single time you do new offer testing.
Okay, so literally like any patterns in terms of like what the landing page looks like, what the creatives look like, the whole thing, you're going to pretty much assume you're going to have a similar audience and take as many patterns as you can for the next offer, next creatives.
Exactly. Should be a carbon copy basically.
Yeah, and then go from there.
Just new offer.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. And of course, we're talking about companies that are selling similar types of products. Like in this case, we're thinking of something that maybe has multiple physical products. If you have digital course offerings, it definitely can work. If you're mix and matching, probably not going to work.
Yeah. It'll get more complex and more complex you get as a business.
Yeah. I was talking to a founder yesterday about this, but mixing and matching physical and digital product offerings is definitely totally separate tests, which kind of has to be go back to the start of what we were talking about at the podcast, starting from zero. Yeah, I think that makes sense. We also talked about, these are the two other phases. We kind of have like testing the initial product, getting to break even or slightly profitable, moving to follow on products, which again, you're going to have some patterns that you're copying, both in terms of the offer and the creatives. At that point, you're starting to have a playbook for testing new offers. And the next point is where you're going to be net profitable in terms of including your cost of goods. Further down the line is going to be when you're net profitable, including your cost of goods and including any agency fees or outside contractor fees or employee fees for who you brought on to run something like your paid channel. So including that all in, being net profitable is going to be farther down the road. We usually say in the 3 to 6 month range. Could definitely be quicker for a company that's spending more, has more established offerings, which is kind of like the next type of company we're getting into. And then Austin, do you want to go over anything else with smaller companies before we get into that?
I think that's a good fundamental baseline, is like get one offer working, allocate 10 to 20% to remarketing. Use one-day click ROAS for your remarketing. I want to stop auditing accounts and seeing remarketing look good and then realizing that it's just taking all these view through conversions. A personal pet peeve of me auditing people's accounts, but stop running unprofitable remarketing. You've already paid for those people one time. Stop continuing to pay for them at a loss.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Good caveat. So the next type of business we're talking about is usually a larger company. The big differentiator for us is normally it's going to be a company above 5 mil a year. But there's two, I think, more important differentiators. One is that it's a company that's likely spending at least $50,000 per month on ads overall, sometimes that much on their main sort of hero offer. And then the second one is that this is normally going to be a company that has plans to sell sometime in the near future, usually the 2 to 3 to 5, somewhere in their year range, to either private equity group, a larger company as a strategic purchase. They have plans to do that. So they're a little bit more aggressive on, what they're willing to tolerate in terms of dips in profitability while they're testing paid acquisition. And then another huge kind of subset of these companies already have a fairly mature analytics infrastructure, which means they're able to do things like more accurately track cohort analysis and know how far down they can go in terms of, not being profitable and exactly when they expect to make that back. So they're a little bit better with forecasting, a little more risk tolerant, and then just their appetite for growth is different because they're not trying to maximize profitability in the short term. They're trying to maximize it in the long term or even only through a liquidity event. So very different use case for setting up a paid acquisition channel. So all those caveats being said, out of the way, this type of business and this timeline will only apply to those people.
Yeah, and this is a much more accelerated timeline normally, based on two things. One, current standing in the ad account. So are you currently break even with COGS? Are you currently very profitable with paid? Of course, like performance will make up a major component of the road to profitability. But if someone's already spending 50 grand, it's likely they have at least one, but maybe 2 or 3 different offers that are running that are working, or they're just testing their hero product with, different angles, basically. Either way, that road from 50 to 150 to 200K to 300K in ad spend is a very similar road. And it really becomes a case of rigorous audience testing or rigorous creative testing and ensuring that we're using a CAC to LTV model to understand how much we can pay for a person on the front end. That's depending on if the retention is dialed in and we know someone's worth X later in time.
Oh, one quick caveat too. There's a lot of people that misconstrue CAC to LTV in e-Comm. Just want to clarify, we're talking about the 60 to 90 day LTV. We're not talking about like actual long term. My bad.
Yeah,
just want to make sure.
We're talking about standard paid loan, basically, terms, which is like 90 days normally. Yeah, so we're using that to understand how much we can now pay for a customer at scale. And that will change a ton depending on actual business funds. VCs sometimes have a lot of money and they just want to rigorously and aggressively acquire new people at a loss. And it's cool. It's just definitely dependent on the business. But on the other side, it is starting to understand like the total ecosystem growth as well. So how is Google performing when Meta paid increases? How is customer survey questions and answers changing? Are more customers saying that they came from TikTok? That was the first place that they saw the brand, or Meta or YouTube. And then at the same time, is Amazon improving? Is wholesale improving? We're measuring much more than just paid specifically, but we're looking at paid as the guiding light of like, hey, if we're break even or profitable on that first conversion at a high spend around 100 to 150,000 a month, then all of that other stuff is essentially gravy. on top. Wholesale, retail, Amazon.
Yeah, totally. And so for testing new products, I think the biggest difference I've noticed with these companies is they already have an idea of like what their playbook, they think their playbook is for testing cold. Normally that gets refined with people, but I think the two important things, maybe you can talk about how you've seen this change with these types of companies, is the starting point for their playbook in terms of like landing pages, audiences and creatives they want to test, and then the speed at which that playbook gets updated and how it changes as they release follow-on products that they're trying to make close to or profitable on paid traffic as they like horizontally expand their paid traffic offerings.
Yeah. So typically, it's interesting because there's a yes and a no to that, which is like a lot of them have very refined playbooks that do work most of the time. And the no is sometimes it doesn't work with a product that it should work. I think that just becomes part of like why the product was developed though. And like the product market match for sure on these platforms, the competition that's already there, yada, yada. But for most of the time, when launching a new product and a new offer test, it is a carbon copy playbook. So it should literally be same page, duplicated. Of course, if it's a new product, we're changing like headlines, copy, yada, yada. It's the same offer page, but it's just taken with every single learning, converted to whatever this new product is. And then we're doing that exact same thing with ads across the board. So we're testing all of the winners we had before. So if it's like product focused imagery, it's like this should be product focused imagery. If it's like benefit driven, if it's comparison driven, if it's UGC, if it's whatever it is, it should be like pretty much the exact same thing. Can be, if it's UGC creators, the exact same people, except now they're talking about this new product instead of the one they were talking about before. Influencers, same thing. And even this down to the style of copy should be the exact same for the ads, which is like if story copy is working really well for X product and we start a new one and now we're leading with just a benefit style copy or like a buy it now copy and it's not working, there's a reason. We're not using the learning we had before that attracted a customer into the ecosystem anyways. So it's really carbon copying. Now the one caveat here is a company of this size that already has profitable offers on Meta has a pixel that's likely dialed in, attuned, and the account does know who a buyer is. So it's going to be much easier for them anyways to launch a new product and find buyers because of the fact that they have more data, and the more data, the better the machine learning.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah. And I think that one thing to clarify too is I mentioned this word playbooks a couple of times. It's pretty ubiquitous in the growth space. Very different meaning for different types of businesses. So for a standard e-com business, all we mean by playbooks is you're normally going to be testing different types of copy. Austin just mentioned like story copy versus a discount copy. There's going to be different creatives. We always talk about UGC, influencer creative, product shots, and lifestyle images as like 4 basic types with lots of variations. And then landing pages, like what the setup is, what the offers are on a cold traffic landing page, whether that's like one, multiple, auto or optional, recurring if it's a consumable product, and then the checkout experience, what happens there, as well as like the immediate post-purchase things. I would include all that as being part of cold traffic profitability. We're talking about like return on ad spend day 1 through the 60 to 90 day LTV. All that matters, especially the first follow-up sequence. So that being said, a playbook would be sets of all those variables that you've already tested that you know that worked. So that with every product you're releasing, you're not just like, oh, here's all the things we can test. Like, let's test them all. You definitely want to avoid that. I see this a lot with posts and people talking about how to test, and they give all these frameworks for testing. And the problem is if you're just giving people a bunch of options at each step to test, they're going to be bleeding out cash every time. So that's totally unreasonable if every test you have includes all of the variables you could have. So like I kind of do a facepalm every time I see just a list of testing variables and like how people structure tests, because like the big thing is not how you structure the tests. Like you can, again, like Google that or ChatGPT that. It'll give you an amazing list of all the frameworks for testing. It's your learning internal to the company and how you're applying them to follow on products and offerings that are the intellectual property and the long-term value you're making an investment in when you work with someone that's doing testing for you. It's eliminating your choices. That is the investment you're making. You know what you eliminate up front.
Now there is a Trojan horse though, it's just a hard nature. This is you could test products, you could test offers, you could test creatives, but have you ever tested running from someone else's page? So like this is where it becomes like, hey, maybe your business doesn't resonate yet and your pixel isn't dialed in, but if you do use someone who already resonates with your customers and their account is dialed into who buyers are, then you pretty much go around a lot of this process. So we've taken accounts that have $0 in spend to the 30, 50, 75,000 in spend pretty much instantaneously. And I'm not going to say like same day. I'm saying like within 3 to 4 weeks, using 1 to 2 influencers who already have that pre-existing audience and have great content about the product. It's that simple. It's wild.
Yeah. Category specific influencers with audiences that are trained to buy similarly priced products are the one true hack right now in advertising that can circumvent a lot of this process, or more profitably be applied to accelerate this process in some cases such that it's profitable immediately and it continues to be as these playbooks are developed. That's how dramatic the change can be. And it's really as simple as developing relationships when you know you're going to move into a category with people who are creators in that category, or finding people who can recruit those people for you. Or finally, if you're really scrappy, setting up a sales process to recruit these people, which we always talk about as the highest leverage point in direct consumer marketing right now. That's super underutilized.
Yep. Yeah, it is insane that it works as well as it does, but not only is it good for triaging an account that it seems like everything's dead and it won't meet a ROAS that will allow you to be profitable, but it also will literally take an account that has never done anything and immediately let you become profitable if it's the right person. Granted, a lot of this is about the choice of the B-list influencer.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm like looking at our notes for this episode. I feel like we really hit everything. Is there anything else you wanted to go over?
I don't think so.
America's on the up and up.